Hello, I'm Ed and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast series, Tackling It Together, brought to you by Little Blackbird, where we will be having open, honest and important conversations with some inspirational guests. Hello and welcome to Little Blackbird's podcast, Tackling It Together. And today our guest is Matt from Smash Life. Matt, how's it going?
I'm okay, thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, good mate. So we had the pleasure of speaking to your brother, Andy, in a previous episode. And we're going to get a different perspective now. So just tell me a little bit about you and your role in Smash Life.
Okay, so I'm a director of Smash Life, but unfortunately my boss is my younger brother, Andy. So I'm always on a written warning. I've always got the P45 in the post. A little bit about me. Wow, where shall I start? From the beginning?
So what differs you from Andy? No, Andy's football, sport, but the vehicles that you bring to Smash Life is a little bit different in terms of how you work with young people.
Definitely, I think good question, because a lot of people assume that we're both the same. And this is interesting, isn't it, when we're talking about siblings in care. But we've got to remember they're all different, they've all got different needs and they process events and they have different perspectives. So the difference, I'd say, between Andy and I is Andy's gone down a sporty route, sporty spice, whereas I'm music spice. But it's a nice contrast, you know, because obviously not all young people love sport and not all young people love music, which always surprises me, but they don't. So yeah, difference being we both went to university, separate universities, studied two different things. I'd say mine's more in line with this kind of career, youth and community development at Leicester. So I come from a youth work background. I've worked in youth clubs, I've run youth clubs, I've managed staff, I've held budgets before all the cuts came in. I've supported young people who have found themselves homeless for the YMCA. I've worked in the safeguarding team alongside social workers. So I've got the lived experience of growing up in the care system. But what I think is unique for both of us is we've now got the professional experience. So I've seen it from both sides.
And what you mentioned there about being brought up in care with Andy, but what was driving that passion to go into a career working with young people and specifically working with, you mentioned the YMCA though, they're young people in difficult situations. What was driving that passion for you to do that?
So when I left school, and I worked with young people aged between 8 and 18, 19, and a lot of them, you'll say when they're 14, 15, what do you want to do? I don't know what I want to do. That's okay. I didn't know what I wanted to do, or I hadn't found what I wanted to do until I was 19. I couldn't put a label on it. I couldn't contextualise it. So I was a bit of a dreamer at school, thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I want to go to college because all my mates are going to college. I want to go to uni because all my mates are going to uni, and I don't want to feel left out. So it was positive aspirational stuff. It wasn't like I want to be in a gang. It was good stuff, you know. Where I found myself was around people who had very big aspirations in life and I didn't want to feel left out. So yeah, I think college, worst time of my life. University, failed the first year in Bath, realised I was doing the wrong course in sociology. And then I went and did an interview in Leicester because my girlfriend at the time was studying footwear design. Yeah. And they luckily had a youth and community course. And I read up on it and I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be a youth worker. I know I want to work with people. Don't ask me where that came from. I just knew it. I'd done play scheme jobs. I'd worked with young kids. I'd looked after them and put events on in the holidays with them. I knew I was good at what I could do. But I just needed the piece of paper to get the jobs afterwards, like we all do. So off to Leicester I went for 3 years.
Brilliant. And what was the difference between college, which you said was a tough time, and those 3 years at Leicester?
Okay, good question. So college, I enrolled in college in the September 1998, and in the August 1998, I'd been kicked out of my 8.5-year abusive placement. So you can imagine, I'm a young lad, I've been kicked out around August the 11th, 10 o'clock at night, roaming the streets. Social services didn't know where I was, and then all of a sudden, I'm in an inappropriate placement. The lady was nice, but I went from a strict home to you can do whatever you want. And then what do you do when you're 16 and somebody says, you can do whatever you want? I was going out clubbing, I was drinking, I was staying in bed with my girlfriend all day rather than going to college. I'm being really honest with you. I was doing everything but what I should have been. I wasn't eating right, I'd lost a lot of weight. I was reeling from the trauma, but trauma wasn't a thing that people were talking about then.
No.
Triggers, PTSD, you know, and because I've gone through therapy and counselling, I'm able to link those dots up now and go, why do I react like that? Why do I behave like this? Right. And now I can use some of those things that I've learned in my practice to help young people and help them when they're 12, 13, 14, understand triggers, trauma, attachment styles. People think these things should be just discussed amongst professionals at a training event. I disagree. I think it needs to be discussed with young people so they fully understand, so they can make those links, because they're brighter than what we give them credit for. They're taking the world in. They can hold a lot more information than we can from multiple sources. So I always try and treat young people like young adults. I never try and patronise them. And I think that's why I get authentic and genuine connections with them.
And with that, how do you personally find letting go and saying, right, I'm off, based on what challenges that young person's going to have because you've lived it?
It depends on the case, I will be honest, because each one's very different. So before we get to the end, we're reminding them, we're telling them, but also we say to them, and it sounds cheesy, but we give them a t-shirt or a hoodie, and I say to them, when you put this on, remember somebody somewhere believes in you, because I want them to feel, even if I'm not there, that they've got somebody with them in spirit. So we say to them in there, we give them a nice farewell card with a lovely message and a quote, and we say put that somewhere where you can look at when you feel low. And also you can follow us on the Instagrams and the TikTok. You can stay connected, because I think that's the big thing. It's how can we stay connected with people in the modern world? Well, we've got social media, and if it's managed right, young people are all over it. So it's that they still feel connected, and we get young people messaging us months, years afterwards, updating us on how they're doing. So it's sort of, continuing it in different ways. We do projects, so we say come to our woodland, music experience, sport experience, the football team that we've set up. So there's always a continuous link. And what I say to some of those young people where it's appropriate is go and get your qualifications. If you have a desire to work with young people, come back and talk to us, because you've lived this, and look at what you've gone through and look at the skills that you've picked up. They don't even realise it. So reminding them, you've got this, and I might not be there, hi, Harry Potter in your pocket, but, it's reminding them that also of the skills that they have got, because we're quick to remind young people sometimes of the skills they haven't got. And a lot of what I do in the sessions is fun stuff, building them up, but also encouraging that self-reflection. I say if you can self-reflect from a young age, and it sounds cheesy again, but it is a spiritual journey life. I always say to them, you're on a journey, you're going to mess up, it's okay, but always ask yourself, what did I learn? You're going to fail, okay, but what does that teach us when we fail? What lessons have you learned? So I come from it maybe from a different point of view than the textbook. I try and remind them like you're loved, because I think young people need to be reminded that they're loved, especially in some of the circumstances that they've been through, and people care about you. I think those are the two big ones for me, because when I do meet young people, you can tell the ones that they'll mask it. Yeah, everything's fine. And it doesn't take long before you're underneath the mask and you're exploring the stuff that they really want to talk about.
Yeah. And you mentioned connection as well. And that's the positive, we talk a lot about social media and the challenges, but also the real benefits are that young person, if they've had their sessions, they can still see you. They can still see the work that you're doing. They might just see the logo and look at their logo and think, I'm still connected. And how important is that?
So I recently had Andy sent me a screenshot. He said, someone's written under your video, and it was from a young lady who I've previously supported. And because she's been moved to a different part of the UK, within the care system, there's no direct contact. I don't know where she's been moved to, the stuff that's happened. And I just think, wow, she's taken time out of her day to write under one of our YouTube videos. And when I read it, it was like, wow, that was really, but it's testament to the connection that we both had built up. I think I did probably about 40 sessions with that young girl.
Wow.
But the stuff she'd been through is, you know, it's very moving. If you stop and think about it too long, you just sometimes want to burst out crying. But that's because I'm an empath and I feel those sort of things. And I've realised that. I'm like, why does this affect me so much sometimes? You know, it's not all the time, but it's because, one, you've been through similar, I'm not going to say the same, but two, you can really, like you said, you see them for the age that they are. You know, you're not making them an adult before they're an adult. Some of these kids are like 9, 10, 11, and you're thinking, oh, like, no child should go through what you've been through in an ideal world, but they have, unfortunately. But it's our job to remind them, I think, personally, Smash Life or a human being, that not everybody in the world is horrible if they've been through abuse, and the world can be a safe, nice place, but if you have certain things that you live by and certain techniques and watch out for certain road signs, you can navigate yourself through, you know. So yeah.
And that's emotional intelligence, isn't it? Understanding who you are, what you need, and what you potentially need to avoid. We were just saying it before, weren't we, about alcohol, and I can actually make a decision. I don't have to drink it. But that's what, in speaking to you and Andy, that's what you promote. You allow that personal growth for young people. With to say, I'm here, whether we're here for sessions physically, or whether we're here on the end of a DM, or whether we're here on the end of social media, or a football event, or a music event. That is exactly what you're doing. You're giving young people that time to understand who you are. Who are you? What's under your mask? What do you want to talk about? What do you need to get off? And that's what's truly inspirational about what you do.
And the reason I'm passionate about it, same as Andy, is because we didn't have those individuals growing up. I'm not going to say that no one cared about us or loved us, but I think there were moments where we had, well, I can think of one social worker who was very good, who we're still in contact with, who was the only professional to say sorry about what went on. So, legend in my eyes. It takes a lot for someone to say sorry. And this is a thing, we're trying in our sessions to model the behaviour we expect from young people. So if I'm late to a session, I'm really sorry I let you down. Bang. Wow, an adult saying sorry to a young person. So I'm always saying to adults, whatever sector they work in, whether it's education, residential, drop your ego. What? Yeah, I know you're a teacher and I know you've gone to university and worked really hard, but let's face it, young people don't really give a shit. Sorry for swearing, but they don't, not in this world. Because I interviewed a few weeks ago about 12 young people, and I asked them, what would you want this school to change? And they said, teachers to not think like we're above young people. And sometimes I see it and I'm like, why are you talking to that child like that? Like, why? You're actually paid to actually deliver education to that child. So your job should really be to get them on side, like a football coach. Come on the journey with me. Let's have fun together. Let's learn together. It's a hard job because they got 30, 40 kids in the class. But I'm thinking about young people's experiences of schools, and the more I go in, the more I see there's some brilliant practice, but we're in a real, I said to Andy, we're entering a stage now where it's going to go one way or the other. Behaviouralist, strict, or therapeutic, a different way. And it's up to us as parents, governors, teachers, what kind of world do we want to create? Because these schools and that, they reflect our society. Are they kind places? Because what do we want our workplaces to be like? Because if we're not modelling it in schools, those young people go out, they become the future bosses, the future leaders. And if they don't know how to say sorry, be kind, be genuine, be vulnerable, ask for help, what kind of world are we creating? And it's no wonder so many people are on prescription drugs who are probably our age, who are masking it and just getting through because they haven't learnt those skills. Sorry, I know I can go on.
No, as you said that, it took me back to a conversation I was having with someone recently, and it was all around that as an adult. And it's interesting, the individual I was talking to was probably had a lot of traumas that were just rearing their head, and the first time they ask for support is medication is offered. Take that. And it's a doctor, so I will take that. But what they actually wanted was someone to help them grow. Someone to put the symbolic arm around them and say, 10 sessions, let's figure out who you are. But that empathy isn't there. You mentioned before about, you talk about dropping the ego, even the system, child protection review, a child will be there and there'd just be chairs of professionals formally dressed around. And it's like,
what kind of world are we creating? When we do child protection conferences, who's the most important person? The young person. So if they're being invited to the child protection meeting, then why are we creating that scenario and atmosphere for the adults and not the young person? So I remember one meeting I went to when I was 16. This is 1998, 16, 17. I was angry, but the placement had broke down that we were in. No joke, there was 20 professionals in that meeting. And I was there with a friend's mum who'd come along to support me, just looking around going like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's got better now. I think more people understand, they're more young person led, they try and capture their voice and feelings and opinions rather than all the professionals, because we can all have an opinion about a young person's life, but they're going to tell us probably more information if we get the right connection and give us more insight than we could ever probably give. And it doesn't matter how many theories you learn at university, if you've got a good relationship connection with a family or a young person, that's going to give you all the weight in any of those meetings and the evidence that you need.
Hello, hope you're enjoying the episode. If you are, please engage with us on whatever platform you're listening. Leave us a review, rate the show, subscribe, a comment. Please engage with us so that we can keep these podcasts as on point as possible and keep you happy. Take care, all the best, keep smiling.
Sorry, I'm probably going on again.
No, you're not, because what I'm thinking about is you versed that old school system, and you're right, it has come on a long way. We're not here to say that it's not right, but if you look back at that old school system, what do you do in Smash Life that's different? How do you promote the personal growth and development of young people who will have experienced trauma or potentially had difficult attachments? What is it that makes you unique?
I'm going to be really honest. I think the thing that makes us really unique is we share our vulnerability. And we say to all our staff, you can't go in there as a robot. I see a lot of services and they're very good, but the staff are very kind of teacherish, I've observed. So when I go into these schools, I see they're modelling teacherish, kind of even when they're mentors. And I'm saying, no. You go in, you tell that young person a little bit about yourself, whatever you're comfortable with and within the context of the age and stuff of that child. But you're sharing your vulnerability. You tell them that I've messed up as well, and this is what I've learned at the right time. So if we're having behavioural issues at school, well, I wasn't perfect at school, and this is why I was doing it. Can you relate to that? Yeah. 9 times out of 10, yeah. And then you find that common ground. Well, this is what worked for me. This is what gets me through it. And I've had 30 years to reflect on my experience at school, so I've got 30 years of wisdom. Yeah. I can go, when that young person is trying to get a reaction from you and you just smash them in the face and then get done, they're like, yeah. I'm like, right, have you heard of something called strengthening silence and not reacting to those people? Because guess what? They've got their popcorn ready and they've got their mobile phones ready to film you. Oh, yeah, actually, maybe you're their entertainment. Maybe you're their Netflix. But this is it. It's saying it in a way that they can understand it. And I do try and be humorous and funny because I want them to leave those sessions bouncing. And it's not a false kind of positivity like, hey man, life's going to be great. It's sort of like, we both know life can be crap. Me and this young person, you've been through stuff, I've been through stuff. But we can make the best of where we are and the resources that we have right now. I don't know where Andy and I have got this kind of positive outlook from. I think, I'm going to be honest, I think a big thing of it is we both felt over the years we've had to prove a lot of idiots wrong. I'm going to be honest, people that wrote us off just thought we were naughty kids, thought we were trouble, or those two. When we first started, when we did our launch, we had nearly 300 people turn up. It was at our old school, and we both said, let's just do a presentation about our life. Minimum planning, really. We did it. People were like, oh my God, that was amazing. But I remember after it, it was like, Everybody was around us, from the job centre to local authority to charities. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So Andy and I had to go, what is it we're passionate about? What do we want to do? Because you can quite easily fall into the trap, and I see a lot of businesses do this, where they just go, money, 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 and they don't specialise in anything. They just become, I don't know, just a watered down version of whatever it is. So for us, it's mentoring. Mentoring, group work, music experiences, football. I want young people to associate the Smash Life brand with positivity, fun, and yeah, I can. If I look at that, overcoming life's hurdles together. You're not on your own, you know. There are going to be hurdles in life, but we can overcome them together if you open up and talk to me. So it's all in the branding.
Yeah. You said something before when you were talking about your college days, that now looking back, you knew you were reeling with that trauma.
Oh, worst period of my life. I had a girlfriend at the time, and if she ever watches this, she won't. But I had a girlfriend at the time who I'd formed a really unhealthy kind of attachment, because when you don't have anybody that you feel loves you, and somebody expresses like, I fancy you, I like you, oh my God, I'm going to be with this person forever. And then you realise, obviously, as you get older, you mature. But when you're in that headspace, and I see kids now, they're like, you know, and I was with her for 4 years.
Right.
And yeah, just... I remember it split up in the last year of college, just when I went from that abusive placement to the inappropriate placement, and then I moved in with a family where it was a really nice family environment that I chose, not my social worker. I lived in their shed for 4 months because they didn't have a room, but Andy was living there, and I used to go around every week, and I loved that family. But they started to give me the routine, the food, routine, love. Like, you can do this, Matt. And my second year of college was so much better than my first year. And without them, they live in Shrewsbury as well, I don't think I would have gone to university. So thank you to them.
So just again, what was it that they gave you that enabled you to progress?
So I always talk about this, let's create homes that are magnets. So you know what it's like. We've all grown up where you're like, oh, I just want to leave home. I just want to be an adult. I just want to get out there and live my life. But if you've got a magnet, if you've got that fun, all right, there's discipline. If you mess around, there's going to be punishments. But you got that structure, routine, that love, that warmth, that laughter. You can be yourself in your home, whereas I couldn't for 8.5 years. I was one person at school and then another at home. Whereas when I got to this home, I could be myself, and I could open up and say, I'm having girlfriend problems, and you know, and then they would give me little nuggets of advice, and that's when I started to think, maybe I shouldn't be in this relationship. But you know, it's just, that was one element of my college days. I was very good at football. I was the only first year in the first team, and there was 5 teams at college, and a lot of my friends were like, how have you got in the first team? And I just used my brain. I went to the trials, and instead of playing in the popular positions, I went, I'll play left back. And I had a blinding kind of audition, or whatever they call them, trial, and I got in the first team. Then I messed it up. So I got in the first team, was playing, told the strict coach, who was that authoritarian, like, and he just rubbed me up the wrong way, but he triggered me. He reminded me of the guy that abused me. So I went to him in my own sort of arrogant teenage way, and he dropped me to the 5th team. Right. And then had to work my way back up. But I look back and I think, yeah, he taught me something there, though. Respect, maybe he could have done it in a better way. But it did, you know, to have that respect, to work hard for the results as well. And, you know, just because I got there straight away, I then had to go back and play for those teams and appreciate where I was, rather than I'm in the first team. Whereas now I couldn't give a monkeys about being in any team. But back then, that was what made me feel good about myself. Seeing that name on the board in the first team, and all my mates were hating it, really, like, how's he got in the first team? You all right, lads? But at a time where I needed a boost, it gave me a boost. Sport gave me a boost.
So we talked about sport, but I know what is a big passion of yours is your music. And I know I was watching your music video on YouTube the other day about your past, and you use music as a vehicle with young people.
So growing up, I was sent to my room a lot. Overly the top punishments where, you know, back then in the 90s for that, it was like, get to your room. We don't want to see you. Out of sight, out of mind. But I had a CD player in my room. First it was a tape player. Kids won't know this now, although a tape player, you know, used to record the radio and then stop.
Top 40.
Yeah, and then it's CD player. And I remember just going up there, and I only had a few CDs at the time, but I'd just be in a trance listening to the songs. And from it, this will make you laugh. What do you think the first album was I ever bought? You won't even guess the artist, mate, 'cause you'll laugh.
What year? Mid-90s?
Early 90s. I remember they were like, what album do you want? It was like Christmas. And we went to Woolworths in Swansea. I always remember this, and I went, I want the Carpenters' Best Of. Right. Then I went
going to go the Verve.
Right. So then I went from that to Michael Jackson. Oh my days. Thought I was Michael Jackson. Then it was pop. E17, you know, Spice Girl, all the Backstreet Boys, loved it all. Then it was Green Day, Oasis, The Verve, Underworld, all of Prodigy. And I remember listening and thinking, how are they doing that? No. And the guy that we lived with who abused us was a drummer. And when I saw him 2 years ago, I said, why didn't you ever get me into music? And he said, I didn't think of that. I thought, you idiot, that is a vehicle and a medium for connection. So when I left, I got my first guitar in March 98. I literally took it out the case, can't play this, back onto the bed. And it was only until I got kicked out and I'd met a friend who went to school with me, and he was worldy on the guitar. He'd been having lessons since he was like 10. So I went around his house going, what can you do? All right, Matt. I'm like, oh my God. But it really inspired me because he helped me, and he was like, oh, put your fingers there, do that. And then I went on my own journey. So that was 99. And then I moved in with that family, and the guy that I moved in with was a bass player in a cover band around Shrewsbury. So then I was going to pubs and watching him going, how's he getting everybody dancing? How are they doing this? To me, it was like, wow. And then he introduced me to like The Who, the Beatles, you know, David Bowie, you know, all these artists that I, you know, because you get quite blinkered, don't you, when you're young? This is the only music that's ever existed. But it was like, wow. And then, yeah, just, I spent hours in my bedroom, whereas Andy was probably out drinking, you know, with his football buddies. I was locked in my bedroom, learning the guitar, playing along to records, and he probably saw me as like a weirdo.
Well, when I spoke to Andy, I said, what's the difference between you and Matt? He said, well, I'm very external. So he said, if I was struggling, I would just be quite aggressive. He said, Matt's very internal. So if you think of you being internal, those lack of attachments when you were younger, looking back now as an adult, what did music actually do for you when you were in that Michael Jackson stage, when you were in that room on your own? You'd been punished and sent to your room, but you had the ability to listen, put that tape on or put that CD player on. What did that actually do for you looking back now as an adult?
Do you know what? I thought about music for a while, and if I go back, my earliest memory is of my real dad spinning the smaller vinyls, don't ask me what size they are, of the Supremes in the front room. Then I have a memory of getting ready for school, GMTV, Wham, wake me up before... So there's always been like this haunting soundtrack. Then I was in a foster placement where there was this... Down in Acapulco, do you remember that song?
Oh, yeah.
So the girl that we lived with, she was about 16, 17, Mandy at the time. Hi, Mandy. She used to be going out to the pubs in the local village, and she'd put on, and I always remember that song, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a tune. And then you'd hear the tune would go off, and then she'd be running down the stairs like, Simon! And you'd be like, oh, the music's gone off. But music's always played a constant in my life. What's it done? It's given me a cathartic release. Rather than hitting drugs or drink to escape, music was my escape. Listening, playing, performing. I've been very lucky. I've learnt a lot about myself, because the world's a very triggering place if you've been through what Andy and I have. And music's given me a bit of a safe kind of haven at times.
Well, it has, and if you talk about growth, you mentioned before that you've actually wrote an album, or you're starting to create your own album.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about your growth and your journey?
So 10 years ago, I did an EP, so 6 songs, 1 remix, 7 songs, sorry. And I started songwriting probably, I wrote my first song probably 2000. And I can play it now, but it's crap. But you just get better and better and better, and you think, oh, I'm actually getting the hang of this, you know. And then it's come to fruition now that I've just finished recording my first debut album, and with my friend Kev, in his bedroom.
Wow.
So we'd record a track a day, starting from the guide guitar track, drums, bass guitar, lead guitar, vocals, so we'd be like 8 hours in, and now he's got to mix it all.
Mate, that's class.
So yeah, I'm excited.
Must
I'm
be
excited
proud,
for
eh?
So I'm not doing it for Spotify or to be famous. I don't care about that. My dream was to just have it on in my car, driving down the motorway, listen to my album. That's enough for me. I don't care if nobody else listens to it. I'm like, I don't care, I've done this. So it's saying to young people, you don't have to be famous to do these things as well. You can be, you can build this up, buy the software and do it yourself. But again, the society we live in, look at like the X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, other people telling you whether you're good enough or not. And that's really scary as a culture, because you can take on people's opinions and criticism, but sometimes you don't know, you might unwittingly squash somebody before they've even started on their journey.
And the last thing I want to ask you, we ask everyone on the podcast for we call them the little blackbird worm of wisdom, bit of advice. And so what advice would you give a young person or an adult, someone who is still kind of reeling with that trauma, whatever it might be?
Okay, so having gone to counselling, not just one set of counselling, quite a few, I think I'll give a few within the answer. So journaling, get your thoughts down, get them out on paper. If you can't speak to somebody, get them out. Write a diary, write about how your day's gone, pick the small wins. There's plenty of journals you can pick up, self-love journals in places like The Works. They're all in there, so you can go in there, have a vision board. So although you might have gone through your trauma, have a vision of where you want to go in life and put that somewhere you can see every day. Set yourself targets and aims, because the worst piece of advice and the best piece of advice I got at 16 was, Matt, no one owes you anything in life. Because I was moaning about what I'd been through. I was actually opening up, and it was the wrong response, but it was the right response, because it made me go, you're right. No one's going to come in here and say, yeah, you've been through a lot, kiddo. Here's £1 million. Go and enjoy your life. You got to make things happen. So I've got a quote up in my kitchen. You've got to make things happen. And it comes from the Oasis song, Cigarettes and Alcohol. I've got to get up and I've got to make things happen. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So I will say to young people, use that hurt, use that trauma as fuel. But go, if you can, and if you've got services around you that I've got the money, because therapy is expensive, utilise that help. If someone says, I think, have you tried therapy? Don't give up after the first one. Go to more, because there's different types of therapy. Yeah. And even though you meet one counsellor and you think, oh, they were rubbish, they didn't, go and try another one. And if it's paid for by the local authority, and stuff, you're not going to pay for it as an adult. Because sometimes as a man, you feel a bit like resentful. You think, like, God, I've just spent X amount of money because of the stuff that happened to me as a child, that I was a bloody child, So acceptance, journaling, therapy, look around you, look at your support network, look at the people that you can trust. Those are the people that you need to start opening up to, not your gang leaders in your local area or whatever who can manipulate you. And recognising what you've been through and joining the dots to your triggers.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But you're right, and I think what you've given in this conversation is a lovely perspective from someone who might be more of the internal, and has given us the perspective of someone who might be more of the external. But I love the way in which you've articulated that, the journals in particular. And listen, all the work you do with Smash Life, from one person who's trying to have a positive impact with young people and adults to another, you're doing a grand job, and thanks for all that you do.
Love it.
Cheers, pal.
I hope you enjoyed Tackling It Together, brought to you by Little Blackbird. If you did, then please hit the subscribe button, give us a follow on our socials, Little Blackbird Limited. Also, please give us a like and comments on any thoughts that you may have. Let's get these important topics out there and encourage some meaningful, authentic conversations. See you next time. Cheers, and remember, keep smiling.